A very good morning to all you wonderful listeners and viewers of Universal Mentors Association. Welcome to the new day of Digital Education Summit and Awards 2022. Today is the day two of this amazing summit. Yesterday, we had witnessed the leaders from the K-12 and the early childhood education sector talking about the new era, post pandemic. Comparisons were drawn between the pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, and post-pandemic era. uh, it has become imperative that we involve the most important uh, segment in a student's life, and that is the higher education sector. And we have to start off the day with, we have some really amazing speakers who would be talking, and you would be be wowed by the panel that we have in front of us today. uh, you know some really stalwarts of higher education joining in for the first panel today. I'll quickly introduce you with the topic. It's talking about the impact and role of national education policy in India's higher education sector. We've all been talking about national education policy since the policy had been framed. So this panel, I think, will talk about the ways in which that it could be implemented. Without further ado, let me quickly introduce you to the panelists. First of all, the moderator, Dr. Abhay Kumar, who is the Vice Chancellor of Pratap University. Welcome, sir. Professor Dr. T. G. Sitaraman, who's the Director of IIT Guwahati. Professor uh, Dr. Gopal Murgaya, who's the Director of National Institute of Technology, Goa. Professor N.V. Ramana Rao, who's the Director of National Institute of Technology, Warangal. Professor Nilesh Kumar Jainji, who's the professor from IIT Indore. Professor Rajat Muna, who's the Director of IIT Bhilai. Welcome, sir. It's always a pleasure to have you on board. Uh, Professor Saikat Chakrabarti, who's the professor IIT Kanpur, and Mr. Rajan Paul, who's the director of Institute of Management Studies. It is a wonderful panel that we have in front of you. Uh, the talk of the town, the few higher education institutions that all the students try to excel at. There is a saying that it is easier to get in MITs and difficult to get in IITs. So welcome to the panel, Dr. Abhay. I would not take another second from this amazing panel. We have a complete 1 hour to discuss this amazing topic, so I leave it in your fine hands, and all the best for this amazing panel.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
thank you, Mr. Sandeep Gulati, and thank you so much for uh, Universal Mentors Association for organizing this wonderful summit. And of course, with such dignitaries present on the platform, it is not an easy task to moderate. Yet, I would try my best to level up to the task. So we have so many dignified panelists here. To start with, in the series given to me, let's discuss about the flow of the program first. I think if we have 2 or 3 minutes or even 4 minutes for each one of us to speak on the topic on their own, then we would proceed in the next round with the question and answers. So if you all agree to that, I think the topic being impact and role of national education policy in India's higher education sector. This is the topic for the theme for the panel today. So to begin with, the first dignified panelist, Professor Sitaram, Director IIT Guwahati. This is the series in which I have been given the names. So I would request you to speak for 2 to 4 minutes on the particular topics.
Namaste and greetings to all my fellow panelists and everyone who is listening to this or going to listen to it through the YouTube later on. The National Education Policy 2020, which has been brought out by Government of India, envisions an India-centered education system that contributes directly to transforming our nation sustainably into an equitable and vibrant knowledge society by providing high quality education to all. I'm going to restrict myself to the basically higher education. And as you all know that we have now started already looking at the implementation plans The Ministry of, should actually compliment the Ministry of Education that they have moved very fast, and a lot of institutes and at least IITs have already started implementing at many levels of this implementation plan. This policy is the first education policy after 36 years in the 21st century. Could be gives you a lot of hope, seemingly, looking at the newer opportunities, particularly in the research domain. I think, the emphasis is on research at all levels. And to do that, there is a lot of many, aspects in the document, which is, I feel, one of the best document which has been developed since independence. And we are celebrating 75th year Amrit Mahotsav of independent India. And I think this is a great gift to the nation. Through this, I think we can be the Vishwagurus of the world. There is a great potential because there are a lot of intellectual capability and the knowledge with the Indian people. And in higher education sector, we are now third in the world in numbers. So I think there is a great potential, I feel, and this has given a real paradigm shift in the education sector. And I think we play it rightly. We could really rule the higher education sector of the world. With these brief remarks, I love to listen to other of my panelists on this.
Thank you so much, Professor Sitaram. And in fact, you have very rightly said that India, it is very historic for the country to get this new education policy after such long number of years. And of course, the policy, as you rightly said, aims way for transformational reforms, both in school as well as in higher education systems in the country. So I fully agree with you on this count. I would now request Professor N.V. Ramana Rao, Director, National Institute of Technology, Warangal, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you, sir. At the outset, let me thank for making me a part of this panel discussion on impact and role of national education policy in higher education sector. Once again, greetings to all my fellow panelists. We have started implementing at NIT. In fact, what this has thrown us some challenges as well as some opportunities for us. We are all aware that NEP, if it is implemented in the right spirit, we'll be moving from fragmented higher education system to multidisciplinary universities, from subcritical research funding to National Research Foundation with resources allocated as percentage GDP and problem first approach, which is very important and very good. And then we are moving from research and development to relevance and delivery, and from tight government control of our higher education system to autonomous higher education institutions managed by board with more alumni on the boards. And also one of the key features is after 36 years or 34 years, this has been revised. The gross enrollment ratio has been increased from 26.3% to 50% by 2035, which is a great thing. But there are certain things which actually we will have to also plan properly. Of course, there is a creation of the National Education Technology Forum, where all the latest technology for teaching and learning is going to be there. And then support for mature learners. And there is a lot of emphasis on promotion of internationalization, especially higher education. We have to become global leaders, and that's where internationalization is going to take a long way. And if you go through the document, there is adequate importance on industry relevance and connection. And it is emphasizing on blended approach for teaching learning. And a lot of emphasis also placed on examination reforms. They're talking about open books, examination on demand or group examinations. And one key thing is academic bank of credits with potential of any time, anywhere, any mode, any language feature, which is going to the new approach for education. These are all student-centric education things that are actually very, very interesting in the new National Education Policy 2020. Of course, as we are all in the education sector, we want education 4.0, what we call anywhere, anytime education to be more personal with flexible delivery, and the role of teachers also is changing from facilitators. They become more of facilitators, and we have moved from what, how to why, where. and a lot of practical applications need to be actually given to our issues, and we have to start evaluating the students, not examining. In fact, what NEP also offers, if you see, go between the lines, it offers multi-exit, multi-entry, multidisciplinary, multi-mode. You can, the choice is with the student. You can go to online, offline, and another thing, multi-institute. The academic bank of credits. The students can choose the credits and a flexible fee, and it is also laying emphasis on holistic approach and multi-language medium. It's again very interesting, and these are the challenges. But what I took the takeaway is a lot of flexibility in it, flexibility in terms of pace of learning, flexibility to the students in choosing the courses, flexibility in choosing the institution, flexibility in the learning methodologies, and flexible entry and exit. So this is a challenge that we all need to address. And I'm sure that a time will come where students will pick teachers and timings. Students will frame their own courses if NEP is properly implemented. Students will design their degrees, and students will take exams on demand. And for the faculty, the change that is going to come is the student or the faculty can pick the departments of their choice depending on the needs and interests. They can have effective delivery depending on the subjects of their choice. They can choose the best mode to deliver any topic or subject, and they can have they are free to do better assessment methods through new methods, and they can have a right mix of research and teaching, which is something very, very unique. So these are my initial observation, but I would like to just conclude saying that the NEP is changing the role of a teacher. We are not just limited to be sage on the stage, but we have to become as a teacher, creator, designer, and supporter of the teaching learning environment to enable learners to interact. So teachers' role is more creative and challenging, so as to design new experiences, combining in-class and out-of-class activities like internship, and using several other teaching learning strategies and digital and non-digital learning materials. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ramana Rao. You have very rightly pointed about personalized learning. You talked about changing the role of the teacher. That is very, very pertinent as of now, if you have to implement the national education policy in the right way. You talked about the gross enrollment ratio, which is to be doubled by almost 50% to 2035 from 26.3 in 2018. You talked about broad-based, multidisciplinary, holistic undergraduate, education with flexible curricula, creative combination of subjects. Then vocational education, multiple entry and exit, points. Of course, and the ABC, which you have talked about, is very, very important as of now, if implemented properly. So thank you so much for the opening remarks, sir. We now have Professor Rajat Moona, Director IIT Bhilai. I would request you, sir, to give some opening remarks of your own.
Thank you, Dr. Abhay Kumar, and good morning to all fellow panelists and all viewers who have been watching this on YouTube channel and everybody else. I think it's a very, very apt topic of role of NEP in higher education. India, right from its independence, has actually laid a very strong focus on education. What we were in 1947 to what we are today, I think there has been a great change. And today, India is actually considered to be a knowledge capital of the world. And NEP 2020, if anything, has been a very forward-looking, futuristic policy, which has brought various holistic aspects of education into the front, into the foray. It actually takes care of all the contemporary methods of using technologies, using a variety of delivery mechanisms and such kind of things. And also it takes care of when we actually go into, as we are looking at doubling our gross GER, gross enrollment ratio, we are looking at large amount of students actually getting into higher education, and therefore demands, needs, and variety of different aspects that would come in. This particular policy caters to all of them. For example, multidisciplinary approach is the need for the time. The engineering, the education itself, the technology itself is moving into multidisciplinary things, and it is not today restricted to one discipline alone. For example, if we take energy, solar energy, we actually talk of environment, we talk of electronics, we talk of physics, we talk of mechanical engineering, and all of them put together actually forms renewable energy or solar energy and these kind of things. We look at electrical vehicle technologies. It's a discipline cutting across multiple disciplines, including mechanical, electrical, computing, chemistry, and physics. So the need for the hour today is to actually have a multidisciplinary thing, and NEP actually addresses that in a very beautiful manner. And we must congratulate the Ministry of Education to bringing out such a forward-looking policy after 3.5 decades. If we look at higher education, it provides good amount of flexibility. It provides mechanisms for people to do education from the best possible sources, either online or offline, including things like platforms such as SWAYAM, from where technology-driven education can also be imparted, and use of academic bank of credits to get credits for the courses done one place into educational program elsewhere. I think it's again a very, very forward-looking thing. It also addresses multiple entries and exits. A student getting into a BTech program may, for example, come out with major and minor degree or honors program or variety of other MTech program, MS program. So in other words, multiple entry, multiple exits, which actually allows a user, allows a student to tailor-make his desire, tailor-make his degrees, tailor-make his exit options, and be satisfied with what kind of things it actually will provide him, where the value addition and what can be the best that is suitable for him. It also kind of encourages things like startups, things like building ecosystem for even in proliferation of technologies, as well as providing jobs and employment. I think it's a very, very forward-looking thing. This is my initial statement. I will be there for the rest of the session.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Rajat. It was so nice of you to have built on certain very important aspects of the NEP 2020, especially having a variety of delivery mechanisms, for instance, having jobs, better jobs and more jobs for the students, because we are going to increase the gross enrollment ratio. So a larger number of students are going to enter into the higher education sector. And therefore, we have to be well prepared in advance of what to do with these students when they pass out. So there are so many aspects which we will be talking about even now. I would now move on to Professor Saikat Chakrabarty, Professor IIT Kanpur. Sir, I would like to hear your opening remarks on the subject.
Sure, thank you. I would be honest, actually. Usually people invite me for delivering technical lectures. So when I got this invitation, I didn't actually pay much attention. But a few days back when I checked, it was about education and policy. So then I was actually worried, what should I say? So then I looked at the did a Google search and downloaded this document NEP 2020. And to be honest, I was actually really surprised. This document actually talks about things that are really progressive. So I can't help, citing one quotation. This is from an article, famous article, Learning a New Paradigm for Undergraduate Education. It's by Bar and Tag. It says, the learning paradigm aims the lecturer's privileged position, honoring in its place whatever approaches are best to prompt learning of particular knowledge by particular students. So clearly, it aims the teacher's privileged position. And this document exactly talks about those things. It talks about experiential learning. It also talks about multidisciplinary education, assessment, innovative type of assessment. So these are some of the things where in which a lot of research is going on all over the world on teaching learning strategies. So the document, I was actually surprised, and a lot of things are actually happening. I was not aware of that. But this is a very promising one, and definitely things are moving in the right direction. I'll just give you one quick example. What is this? Why this experiential learning is needed? When I go to the class, let's say I'm touching a topic, maybe electrical machines. if you only show slides, majority, some people, some students may lose attention. If you only speak about it, then also some people will lose attention. If you actually carry a physical model of the machine, hand over to them, many of them will feel enthusiastic. So the basic idea here is that there are different types of learners. Some of them are audio learners, some of them are visual learners, some of them are kinesthetic learners. They try to do things in hand by hand. So this experiential learning is something that is going to accommodate all these types of learning skills. And there are many more things. Actually, I would love to talk about all those things at length. But just to summarize, I'm quite happy that this kind of document is prepared, and definitely things are moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Saikat. In fact, we have also talked about certain very vital aspects which maybe we would not have talked if you were not here, like different varieties of learners. So the different ways of teaching also. So these have to be taken into account, that some learn through visual aids, some through audios, some through say by hand, as you said. So rightly, the NEP incorporates all these aspects when we talk about it in a holistic view. Thank you so much, sir. Now we move on to Professor Nilesh Kumar Jain, Professor IIT Indore. Sir, I would like to have certain opening remarks from you, if you don't mind, in just 2 or 3 minutes time, sir.
Okay, thank you for inviting me, and good morning to all the fellow panelists and the others who are attending it online. So NEP 2020, I think major emphasis is given that the extensive use of digital technologies for personalized or online learning. And when we talk of online learning, there are certain challenges which all the institute last 2 years have been, facing, and certain things have been evolved. And I don't say that everybody has reached to the optimum solution in any aspect. For example, the practical learning, conducting the practical for the courses of medical, engineering, or pharmacy, or other science subjects is still a challenge. How do we conduct the practical? Second has been the evaluation part, where people have been talking about how can we do the evaluations, which is a challenge for the teachers if we are talking of open book exam, and the integrity part from the student. So the teachers, students, and the leadership of the academic institutions are facing the challenges. Digital technologies, actually, it talks about, there are challenges in terms of accessibility, equity, and inclusion. So, if you talk about, okay, fine, how can we take care of the poorest of the poor student? Because every institute gets the student from diverse, for example, people from Lakshadweep to Andaman to other places, where certain challenges, the geographical location or the topography of the land poses the challenges in terms of accessibility to the ICT, the information communication technology, or how do we get access through internet or even the electricity part. So I think what is important, that internationalization also, it's going to be continued if you want to increase the internationalization in terms of students and faculty. This hybrid mode of learning would be the permanent feature. So these are challenges which we are facing. The other aspect which has been mentioned in the NEP is the MERU, that multi-education, multiple education research universities. So what we have seen in India till now, that we have the specific type of institute for management, IIMs, technology, IITs. Then we have got NIPERS for the pharmaceutical education, AIMS for medical education, other things. But I think most of the IITs and most of the institutes are working in that direction, where they become the typical university which are there in the US or UK, where each university has law, the pharmacy, the intellectual property rights, the agriculture, medical, obviously the technology part. So we need to actually work. I'm sure that most of the IITs, at least we are aware of, the first generation IITs are working in that direction. And there is a multiple thing which we are working. So I think these are the challenges which we need to work. I still feel that the online evaluation is a big challenge, and the conducting the practical classes is a big challenge. So how can we make the gamification, how the VR and AR can be used for conducting effective thing in this? I mean, we have the VR thing for a lot of games. India is very big world leader in the making the games, other things. But that is not as penetrated into the learning, online learning and online teaching. So a lot of disciplines still face this problem of conducting the practical classes where the students have to conduct the experiment on the instrument. How can we make it virtual, and how we can give the actual feeling that yes, I am conducting, let us say, one experiment on the lathe machine, and how this could be done. So through virtual reality and other thing, I think it is possible. And I'm sure that we will, whatever we discuss, something would be useful will come out of it.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Nilesh. It was so nice of you to have dwelt upon the problems also, not only the, say, good aspects of NEP, but how we are going to implement it, the practical classes. Then he talked about Merus. So all these things are so pertinent that when it comes to discussion, I think we have to dwell on certain of these things in detail and in depth. And now I would request Professor Ranjan Paul, Director, Institute of Management Studies. Sir, would you please give your opening remarks?
Sure, sir. Thank you, Dr. Kumar, and good morning to all my panelists and the viewers. I think all the panelists have already discussed some of the key areas. So I'm just going to quickly summarize what are the areas that I feel a little excited about. The first one, of course, is ODL, right? That has the potential of increasing the reach of education by 10x or 20x or whatever. But of course, that has the underlying problem of even today in cities, we have access issues, in terms of devices, connectivity and all that. So those are the problem side of it, but there is a potential there. The second thing that I'm very happy about is the multiple entry and exit point options. So, for example, all of us are aware that both in K-12 as well as higher education, there are multiple dropouts for various reasons, economics being one of the reasons. And so once a student drops out, it becomes almost impossible for him to get back into mainstream. So he loses out on a career or a potential that he had. The third thing is, of course, the ACB, Academic Credit Bank, which allows a student to choose what he wants to study and not to be straitjacketed into, somebody decided this has got to, you got to study and he's got to study that. And the fourth one, I think that's a very crucial one, is the parity of vocational education. Now that has a lot more challenges than just a legislation or a document, because it is very social, because we still don't recognize vocational as socially equal to us. So how do we bridge that gap? How do we bridge a student from a vocational education background to an academics? That's a very critical, and also more critical is, how does industry accept this? Because end of the day, a student is finally looking for a job or a career. So how does industry look at all these kind of things? And the last part from the academic part of it is the research institutions. I think we lack a lot in research. I think that is a great move, and I hope a lot of good will come of that. So that's all I had to say, and the rest I think we can discuss.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Ranjan. Touching so many points and aspects which are very relevant for the National Education Policy 2020. And you talked about academics and length, how to go about it and everything. I think we would now start with the same series and put up some queries which I have in mind, starting from Professor Sitaram. Sir, since you are from an IIT, I think the question which I would like to put forth, which Professor Nilesh had talked about, Merus. NEP 2020 focuses on multidisciplinary education. The Indian higher education system is characterized by single disciplinary islands of excellence, such as IITs, IIMs, and AIMS. Now, this move will result in the system heading towards the creation of a large multidisciplinary universities called MERUs, Multidisciplinary Education and Research Universities, just like those in the US, UK, and other European countries. Now, with increased focus on the large number of specialized colleges to adopt multidisciplinary education. Now, will, in your opinion, the creation of MERUs, especially in aspirational districts, provide access to quality education in diverse fields across the segments of society or not? What are your viewpoints on this?
Thank you. See, 1960s, when IITs were started, they're basically in engineering colleges, as you talked about, okay? Focused only on engineering. Today, IITs are no more just engineering institutions. Please understand, IIT has a humanity department. We offer MA, MA courses in developmental studies, MA in liberal arts. Okay. So today, IITs have been transformed with multidisciplinary education already. See, right now at IIT Guwahati, we have design, science, very strong science program. I mean, equivalent to Indian Institute of Science. And then technology courses. And then now we are also getting into medical school. We will have a medical school soon. We have already started School of Health Science and Technology, which started offering courses in regenerative medicine and medical devices. But we are also going to start a medical school soon with an hospital, full-blown hospital, which gives an opportunity for clinicians to interact with science and engineers, so that the true Indian technologies will emerge. I just wanted to say, Indian Institute of Technologies are no more just the engineering colleges; they are actually institutes of Indian technologies itself. Because in the way the commercialization and technology transfer happening today, large number of unicorns have been we are the fourth largest unicorns creators in the world is India. And in that, if you look at, majority of them are IITians, alumni of IITians. So that clearly demonstrates to you, IITs are no more just the Indian Institute of Technologies. They are already become a Meru, multidisciplinary research universities. Very focus of the IITs are, majority of that is research orientation. All of our faculties are actually been evaluated for their contribution in research and innovation. So not just for teaching. So anymore, this is what is already transformed. And I also want to talk about internationalization. Please look at, I think, recent news you have seen. Ministry of Education is already thinking of establishing. They are actually using the brand name of Indian Institute of Technology, but doesn't mean that it is only technology education is happening at IITs. It is truly multidisciplinary already, because we make all of our students to take courses in humanities, and our humanities departments are also very large, actually, 35 faculty with more than 100 to 200 PhD students studying in those programs. So all these is actually to become a truly multidisciplinary, and we are actually this year starting a MA liberal arts program as well, very similar to many universities across the world. And internationalization of education, it is not just the inviting some institutions from abroad to India. I think many of our institutions are capable of going and delivering higher education across the world. And you might have seen a very recent announcement of IIT going to Abu Dhabi or Dubai. That will happen soon. It is not that one IIT will go there. It will be a completely different Indian Institute of Technology at these locations. And I had a meeting, attended 18 Counselor Generals, we attended. All of them were so enthusiastic to take Indian higher education into different countries. So that means there is a good possibility that Indian academies, actually, if you go to any universities in US, Canada, or even Germany, or even Japan, there are a large number of people are Indian origin as professors. So this, we are already truly a Vishwagurus only. Many US universities, you go and see some of the departments, all of them are Indian professors, majority of them Indian professors and Chinese students. I didn't want to say.
I fully agree with you, Professor Sitaram.
I don't want to say more than this. I think truly multidisciplinary education is happening, and our faculty and our research scholars are quite competitive with the world. And we need to create such an environment as well. There is a challenge in that, providing infrastructure to them, scientific infrastructure, which is capable of maintaining international standards. So that's where we need to focus on. And we need to also fund them, and so that there is enough, because today, open access journals to publish in Nature and other things, it costs almost 3 to 4 lakhs. So we need to fund. That is what we did at IIT Guwahati. Any patent, the entire amount would be paid by the institute for any. So when we announced this, the last 2 years, suddenly there is a quantum jump in number of patents. See, when I joined in 2019, we had hardly about 10 people filing patents. And in the 2020, 31 patents were filed. In 2021, 100 patents were filed by our faculty because we completely supported their cause. Similarly, in open access journals as well, because today open access journals are very expensive, and they are actually the future, because there will be, for a user, it will be a free. But there are some predatory journals also. We have to be very careful while you are doing this. But we have said, okay, we are going to fund some top-notch journals like, Cell or the Nature. Okay, like that. If you are somebody publishing, we bring out the cost. So some of these have to be done. So creating multi-Merus are not that easy. But today IITs can be said they have become a Merus, and there is a great potential to see the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sitaram. In fact, it gives me great pleasure to know, to understand that so many other universities across the globe have got such eminent Indian professors across. Yes, I have met many of them. And of course, the support and the motivation which you are giving to your faculty is of the highest order. We have to support our faculty, and this is how the national education policy can be well implemented. Now, moving over to Professor Ramana Rao. Sir, the successful implementation of credit-based framework allowing full mobility and entry-exit points is going to be very crucial for the higher education sector. Point one, your comments on this. Second, when we talk about the academic bank of credit, I think it is now going to be extended to 900 more colleges as per a news report which I had yesterday. Don't you think there are many comments from many players across the country that why don't we have a level playing field for all colleges and all universities? Because of course, accessibility, equitability, and affordability for every strata of students is different. Every strata of college is different. Every institution has a different variety and set of students. So why restrict it only till say 900 or 1000 colleges? Sir. Professor Rao, are you there, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just. So you are telling the academic bank of credits, why should be restricted, you're saying? So that,
and how is the say full mobility and entry and exit point going to be very crucial for the higher education sector?
Coming to the academic bank of credits, the whole idea is we are talking something called a Bachelor of Liberal Education. The notion of branches are broken, or types of degrees, and tailor-made degrees are coming. And the academic bank of credits allows the conversion of credits into degrees and diplomas. So the notion of educational currency is broken. And then, one interesting feature that is coming out of this academic bank of credits is study in any national or international institution. So the notion of physical campuses and locations are totally broken. So one can move from a lot of mobility, which is one of the beautiful things, that allows in this academic bank of credits. And then it is also an opportunity for a student to be a lifelong learner or enabler. So notion of time of education broken. So you can have fast degrees, slow degrees, multiple entries and multiple exits, depending on the requirement. Because many times we see there are people who go to industry, they require more knowledge so that they can come back at their convenience. So the multiple entry and multiple exit is very valid there. And then, merging of the regular distance online and virtual modes is going to happen. So notion of mode of education is totally broken, and we go to what we call as blended education, depending on the choice that the student can have. And most importantly, the student will have any subject combination. The academic bank of credits offers any subject combination for students. The notion of specialization is broken, and the student can choose more interdisciplinary courses. So that is what is the thing. And then the other question regarding multiple entry and multiple exits, I think we have actually started revamped our curriculum, and then we have created opportunities for students to exit at different levels. But what is the biggest challenge is really how many students would really want to exit at earlier levels, because unless there is a strong reason for them to exit, so we are figuring out why they will exit. But yes, entry many times, we have people who are coming from industry, especially the pandemic. has thrown opportunity for many people to come into the system. They say we have lost a job, we want to upgrade our skills. So we have seen many FDPs, a lot of competition, people coming from outside industry, trying to familiarize them with the latest industry courses like AI, ML, even though they belong to a different background. So the IT field has thrown opportunity for multidisciplinary, whatever may be your domain, it has some application IT. So that is how this multiple entry is going to really helpful to all of us. Thank you, Professor.
So much, Professor Ramana Rao. In fact, I think when we're talking about the Academic Bank of Credits, you have very rightly said, why would the student want to exit? Till there is something wrong with the institution or there is some other option which he doesn't have available there. So there are so many aspects it has to be considered when multiple entry or exit options have to be thought of. Now, and moving over to Professor Rajat Muna. Sir, in fact, you talked about some of the tech transformations and some digital transformations in the country. So what is the correlation between digital transformation and the disruption of higher education? What are the possible benefits of either AI or any other data science in our educational system? And how are the educational institutions creating a forward-looking leadership by redesigning their learning modules, sir?
Wonderful. I think this is a very interesting question. Thank you very much. And let me tell you what has happened during pandemic, and as well as when the NEP discussions were going on and NEP was announced and all that, and how does it correlate? See, first of all, during pandemic, suddenly the education changed to online mode. The students moved away from the campuses and campuses were barren. I mean, there was nothing, no activity happening in the campuses. And from that to now, when suddenly the students have started coming back, the campuses are again in the blooming mode. Let us see what all has happened. Initially, it was actually thought that online education actually created an opportunity so that the education is not disrupted, which indeed was the case. But then as time progressed, people realized that online education cannot be the only thing. There has to be some bit of offline education. And so just around that time, NEP brought on a platform a mechanism and a policy which enabled, in some sense, both the things. How did the online education take place? Let us first look at that. Suddenly, all the video conferencing tools, video conferencing softwares, including this particular conference which is happening online, they all sprouted. A major change that has happened in last 1.5 years is in these digital platforms. At the same time, there have been these technologies like MOOC platforms, like delivery of lectures, SWAYAM platforms and all that, which actually provided a personalized training modules, effectively almost like a personalized training module to the students. Now, let us see what can we do forward. So first thing that we need to understand is that online education is not the wholesome part of it. It only substitutes the classroom education. In typically an institute of higher learning, it is about 30 to 40% of education that happens from classroom. Remaining 60 to 70% education actually happens because of peer interactions, because of off-classroom methods and these kind of things. In an online system where everybody is disconnected, one immediately misses out on the 60 to 70% of the holistic part of the education. Now, what can be done there? One method is that, and this is Academic Bank of Credit also helps. For example, labs can be done in somewhere else and the credits can be transferred into the education where the student is doing. This is one method. I mean, I'm not saying this is the only method, but this is one method. At the same time, because of the online education, it is possible to do the assessment either in the self-assessment mode or in the teacher-trained or teacher-assessed mode. Now, what is this kind of thing that is coming in? With the online education, suddenly the entire world thought, and then, I mean, we actually see it today, a lot of students unions and a lot of students actually opposed to now moving into offline examination systems, saying that the offline education or the offline exam system is some kind of a detrimental for their growth. Is that the real possibility, or is the fear somewhere else? In fact, when I talk to some students, they say in online education, we actually had the opportunity to do copying, but in offline, we will have the invigilated examination system, and this is actually going to be a problem. And indeed so, if you look at the past percentages during offline education, they suddenly increase much more than what would normally one see in year-on-year basis. So clearly in our offline examination system, online examination system, there was some lacuna. Okay. And how could that be actually addressed? In my opinion, digitalization and the computer technologies actually will help a lot. AI ML system that you talked about is actually to assess how much has the student assessed, how much has the student learned, and it's a management of learning rather than taking the question paper from exercise number 312, which is your question number 2 in the exam, and then somebody who has actually done all the exercises of a textbook will be able to sail through. I think it is testing of the acquisition of knowledge that is what is important, rather than testing of the skills of solving problem for real assessment of knowledge. And how do we do that? That is, you can actually have random questions. You can have, in fact, some of our teachers actually did this on a Viva voice based system where they would actually throw questions and ask, assess the performance of the students. Now, this is time consuming. This is bandwidth consuming. Maybe online education, maybe AI based systems can actually be brought in to assess this kind of a thing, to find out how random questions and random scenarios students do well. I mean, how do they fare? And once you can do that assessment, you can actually perform a lot of things. Second thing that you can do is learning modules themselves can be tailor-made based on the weakness of the student, and more emphasis can be given. They can be actually taken to those chapters and those topics and those capsules where they learn more about their weakness, a topic in which they have a weakness. And therefore, they can actually offset their weakness by learning more. And the topics where they are strong, we need not focus that much. So holistic learning can actually be built by timely assessment of the knowledge that a student has been able to obtain. I think digitally it is possible to achieve that.
Thank you, Professor Rajat. So nice of you to have given the statement that testing of the acquisition of knowledge is more important than anything else. And of course, the students are of a viewpoint that we stay with online education rather than offline. But on the other hand, there are some students who don't want to stay at home. They want to come to the college also for a change. So maybe these are certain things we have to dwell on. Well, moving over to Professor Saikat now. Sir, you had talked about different ways of learning by learners. I'll go on the corollary to the teacher's side.
Yes.
What, in your opinion, would be the necessary skills for teachers or faculty members, as well as skills needed by the leadership in the educational institutions as well as industry in terms of NEP 2020? Just have your views on that, sir.
Sure. First of all, we need to take the teachers' training very seriously. So right now, in majority of cases, what is happening, those who are considered to be excellent teachers, I actually talked to many of them, and mostly they follow some ad hoc manner or some way that they found to be suitable. There is in general an absence of systematic training in terms of enhancing teaching and learning. But actually there are such programs. In fact, I did, when I was doing my PhD, I did a complete 36-hour course on teaching and learning. So those type of education is actually existing. So that is something we can actually promote. So that is somehow that is not there as of now, but this is something we can definitely invest in. And that is something that is going to definitely improve the teaching quality in terms of the quality of the instruction of the teachers as such. Okay, so that is one thing. And of course, the use of technology is one thing that we have to invest in, especially, for example, when we are dealing with large classes, let's say. Without using technology, it's going to be very difficult. Nowadays, very easily, we have classes of the size of, let's say, 400, 500, sometimes even 800 or even more than that. So it's simply not possible to deal with those class sizes with conventional methods. You cannot really make eye contact. That's a very much essential thing for effective teaching. Or you don't know, can't really figure out what the students are doing at the back of the class. So use of technology is something that we have to adopt in these kind of situations. So that is another thing. And another point I'd like to highlight here is that the teaching should be, I'll talk about engineering education as an example. It should not be only theoretical. Okay, whenever possible, we have to relate it to the practical world. If possible, let's say we can arrange some industry visits, interact, invite some industry people to take a few lectures. And that system is already existing in many of the IITs, and I'm sure in the NITs also. And that is something we need to actually encourage. And before I conclude, one thing I'd like to highlight here, I've been interacting with not only with faculty members of IITs and ITs, also with different government engineering colleges, even private engineering colleges. One thing I see, which is seriously missing in many of the cases, people, especially I'm talking about the higher education or research PhD programs, very often they miss the reality. I mean, they usually attempt a problem which has only probably academic value. So instead of that, if we can encourage them to tackle a practical problem, and that has a lot of value, however small it might be, if that can be solved, and it has a lot of importance to the society also as a whole. So that culture somehow we have to, that's not there everywhere as of now, but there is something which we have to encourage, and this can be actually taken part, considered as a part of the overall objective of this NEP. That's going to be very useful. Direct interaction with the industry and attempting small relevant industry problems.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Saikat, for giving us an overview of how the teacher should go forward now, keeping in view the role and impact of the NEP 2020. What they should do in terms of teaching methodologies, how they should go about. Thank you so much for that. Now I would move over to Professor Nilesh Kumar Jain. Sir, requesting you also to be a bit brief so that we can go ahead with the program ending at 11:30. Now, NEP 2020, my query is that NEP 2020 lays down strong emphasis on holistic education across schools as well as higher educational institutions. And it acknowledges the need for vocational training for students. This policy reiterates India's very low formally skilled workforce, which is less than 5% as compared to other developed countries. Now, what are your views? How do you think we should go about skilling our workforce in the country?
There are different means of doing. One is upskilling, reskilling, and also not compromising with the existing students. You see, last 2 years, a lot of suffering have happened on the practical knowledge side, whichever field you take. Okay, so why we need the skilled workforce? Because our students are bench shy. They don't are not so good. They are very good in the theory, computational part, numerical thing, but when it comes to the practical thing, they lack that knowledge. So first is that our education has to be, make it compulsory that yes, you have to go to the lab and conduct the experiment. If it is not possible because of whatever thing, the accessibility or this one, so we need to develop a very good virtual labs, which I have already mentioned in my opening talk, that we need to somehow get the technology, what is there in the games, to make the good quality labs. Then the other part is that skill development initiative, how each good institute can take care of the neighboring ITI or the diploma student. They are the ones, the most of the industries, if you see the pyramid system in the industry employment, the people with the PG or PhD qualification at the top, they are very less in number. But the major workforce comes from the ITI, Indo-German tool rooms, or this diploma people or ITI people. So can each institute, each engineering college, whichever IIT or whichever, because now we have got very good array of institute, if they can adopt, if one district has got one model ITI in India, where one particular trade is there and at least some array of trade is there. It's very difficult to get a skilled carpenter or electrician or plumber nowadays. You are full with the engineers, which do not have these things. I think the entire ecosystem needs to be developed, where first of all, the existing students and the institute also has to focus that, yes, we develop whenever we start a new academic program, sufficient labs are there with that infrastructure. That's one is infrastructure part, but how can you do the mentoring? So I think that mentoring is very important when you are using. Third part is that the existing institute can also run the online courses, because this workforce can easily do 3 hours, 4 hours thing in online mode. So if we can do some a lot of really skill development program in online mode, IIT Indore, we have started a lot of things for that, and we are working on that. Indo-German tool room, we are going to have a very good collaboration. So the main thing is that that entire workforce needs to be skilled, and maybe industry workforce also. Online thing, we can use the weekends, we can use evening hours for that. So we have to actually adapt our timing according to the industrial people or those who are working in the defense forces or anywhere else, where their normal working is not affected, and at the same time they also get the benefit of it.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Nilesh. You have very rightly pointed out that we have to adjust our timing and spoken at length on various vital issues. Moving on to Professor Ranjan. Sir, we have talked about internationalization through some of the dignified panelists right now. Now, what is the importance of global collaborations to build an effective education ecosystem in the country? Your views on the opportunities for global alliances for sustainability and growth, venturing new ideas, and for making appropriate strategies for ICT education, skill development, IT, alternate energy, etc., etc. And just to point out in between, the threat which some people feel about international universities coming to India, I feel that they have to customize their product according to the Indian masses, just like Domino's or say McDonald's have done, that they are producing aloo tikkis and samosas also now. So, sir, or your views on such global collaborations? In short, sir. You are on mute, sir. You are on mute. Please unmute yourself.
I said, I'll be brief because we're running out of time. So I think, as some of the earlier panels mentioned, that we have a lot of people, well-qualified people in academic institutions across the world. So, and many of them have done remarkable work. So I think instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, why don't we learn from best practices from others? It could be from other institutions within the country or outside the country. I think we should be open to that, number one. Number two, as you mentioned about the fear, about somebody else putting their education, which is not relevant. I think the market forces are such that, so those courses will be automatically thrown out, because if it's not relevant to me, why should I take it? So they are by force would be, need to Indianize or localize the content and make it more relevant for us. And I think, collaborating with others, we are already doing it. Many of the organizations, many of the faculty members present here are already doing that in their respective institutions. And I think we're getting good results. I think there's an opportunity there, and I think we should be open about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ranjan. Being so specific on certain issues, you have said the market forces would, of course, govern the entry of such institutions. And I fully agree with you on this. Well, it has been a wonderful session today. And in fact, as a moderator, I have gone through a phase of learnings, maybe learning, unlearning, and relearning today. So many aspects, so many viewpoints given by such distinguished panelists. Amazing panel today. Now, I would request Mr. Sandeep Gulati to go ahead and just close the entire session today.
Absolutely, sir. I think it was such a wonderful panel to be listening to, and we're really lucky at Universal Mentors Association to have such amazing speakers joining in, talking the actual issues and, giving the actual solutions of how national education policy can actually be, incorporated or be a part of our regular education system. So thank you so much to all the wonderful speakers. It has been a privilege and a pleasure to have you all, all speaking together on our wonderful platform. It's just one small request that I have with all the speakers is please do support our, initiative, Universal Mentors Association. We have shared with you our sponsors and our supporters links as well. Please spare 10 minutes of your time and spend some time going through their products and profiles, so that and maybe possibly guide them if the product, if you find any thing missing that is there in their product, that will help them improve their product and serve the education industry in a better manner. Thank you so much to all the wonderful speakers. It was a pleasure having you on board. Have a
Thank you so
good
much.
one. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.